Season 1 of Notebook on Cities and Culture is brought to you by Carl Haley, Daniel Murphy, and Douglas Dollars, who reminds you to be present, be loving, and that life moves really fast. So we're at a place in your neighborhood right now that represents to me kind of a new Los Angeles, and I look up the street to the Okie Dog, the world-famous Okie Dog, where you get sausages and tortillas with chili and pastrami on that. Represents an older Los Angeles to me. I sort of see two eras at once here in West Hollywood. Is that too grand, or does it sound right to you?
No, yeah, it is very correct. And I guess West Hollywood, yes, West Hollywood used to be very defined by its thing, which is kind of being the gay/Russian neighborhood. But now it is getting a little more general, straight white Hollywood, and the Fat Dog is a lovely, lovely gastropub with great food, and
which is where we are.
Which is where we are right now. Yes, great food and beer, but definitely represents the saming of the neighborhood. So
it's Notebook on Cities and Culture. I'm Colin Marshall, sitting down in West Hollywood at Fat Dog with Jordan Morris, the actor, writer, comedian. You'll know him from the comedy podcast Jordan Jesse Go. His co-host Jesse Thorne, been on this show's predecessor, The Marketplace of Ideas, twice. You'll know him from parody video game commercials like Gamewave and The Action Circle, a personal favorite of mine. You'll know him formerly from The Daily Habit on Fuel TV, action sports television. You'll know him from writing the web series MyMusic, possibly. He started that recently. And a bunch of places, and a lot of that owes to you moving to Los Angeles. Am I right? I mean, what's your journey to Los Angeles look like? You began life in Orange County, not too far away. But
sure. Yeah.
Tell me the shape of your quest here.
I lived in Orange County for all my life. We moved there from Texas when I was 2, so I don't have a lot of connection to Texas. But for accuracy's sake, I will say that I was born there.
It's the show of record.
Good. Yeah. No, I know. I would hate to have my birth certificate dredged up by some muckrakers and then taken to task for actually being born in Beaumont, Texas. So yeah, so we lived in Orange County for all of my life, basically, and then I went to college at UC Santa Cruz, and that's kind of where I decided that I kind of wanted to get into comedy and writing. Yeah, just kind of always realized that LA was the place where one makes that their business, and moved here after college. It's not very interesting.
But tell me the cultural influences bearing on a young Jordan Morris to make him think he can contribute the most to this world in the sort of realm of comedy.
Let's see. I mean, I guess I was always a comedy nerd. The most important things to me growing up were my VHS off the TV copies of Mystery Science Theater 3,000 episodes, and nothing was more fun to me as a kid than just like sitting around and seeing who can accurately quote The Simpsons the best.
Yes. Now this is important. We're very close in age. For anybody born in the early 1980s or so, senses of humor range from being Simpsons informed to being essentially The Simpsons. A lot of people our age, their idea of a joke is simply to quote The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Am I overestimating the importance of The Simpsons on comedy people of our generation, or is it really the titan that I'm saying it is?
No. Yeah, I don't think for people in their mid-20s, early 30s, I don't think you can overstate the importance of The Simpsons. I think it's probably the most important comedy thing to that generation. And then now it's like where I think The Simpsons probably probably still has a ton of fans. Obviously, it's still on television. But yeah, and I think its influence has been usurped by, kind of the Family Guys and the South Parks and the Always Sunny in Philadelphias of the world.
Right. Do you see that as a good or bad thing?
I think it's just a thing. I think that it is, as...
If I were to use the phrase Family-Guyization, what would that mean to you?
I'll say this about Family Guy. A lot of my peers in the kind of comedy snob world dislike the show. It's kind of seen as being easy and mean and, willing to throw characterization out the window to make a joke. And I think that is, a big part of, the comedy landscape these days. I think that, short YouTube clips are a popular place to get comedy, and those don't have a lot to do with characterization or, heart or feeling. So I think it is, kind of representative of the rapid fire media delivery that people really like these days, that the young people like these days. But I enjoy the show. I mean, I think...
Let me put it to you this way. I myself feel like I used to, those first few years I watched it, I was like, well, this is probably the best thing on television.
Yeah.
And then years passed, and I was like, this might be one of the lesser things on television. I feel like it's somehow I don't know if I changed or it changed, or it kind of turned on a lot of us.
Yeah, well, it's both. I think it is at once one of the best and worst things on TV. It has so many jokes per episode, and some of them are, you feel like you've been kicked in the balls. They're so bad, but some of them are hilarious. And here's the thing, and I think in between the, references to 80s sitcoms and callbacks to commercials and things like that, it has a subset of joke in it that people don't talk about a lot, and that's here's how people talk. And I think it gets better than most things on TV, how people talk and what's funny about it. Like, they'll have these jokes that are just people having a conversation, and the joke of it is, haven't you heard someone do this before? And I think it's really astute and observant in that way. And I think that, when people say, oh, what's the Family Guy sense of humor? Oh, it's the weird cutaway. It's the weird cutaway to the thing that's either super offensive or, just a reference.
Right.
Or just the characters from the show doing a scene from a movie. But I think those jokes about how people talk and mannerisms are really sharp, and I think that that's something that it does better than anyone.
I haven't seen the show in a while, but you make me think. Yeah, there's all these indictments of the kind of posing vacillation of modern man that really get captured. Is that a way to put it? I don't know. How do you think of that?
No, yeah, I think that's true, and I think that whoever writes that show is very, very observant, and I think that's a great thing for a comedy writer to be. I think that someone who is out in the world and observing other people and how they behave and kind of being able to make a joke of that is great, and I think there's the if you look at Woody Allen, it's so I'm sure in the 70s could not, absolutely was writing about what was going on, and now he's just a guy in a villa in France, typing, and I don't know what Woody Allen does when he's not typing, but, he's a guy making 2 movies a year, and as enjoyable as some of the modern Woody Allen movies are, it's not how people are. It's absolutely not. It's just not, it doesn't reflect any kind of real cultural thing.
It's not an actual zeitgeist.
No, yeah, it's not. And
it's a personal zeitgeist. It's his.
Sure, and that's great. And absolutely some of them are totally, totally enjoyable, but it's not coming from any kind of relatable experience.
Now, growing up in Mission Viejo in Orange County, watching your Mystery Science Theater tapes and memorizing Simpsons episodes, why not? Did that make you, in that cultural context, a weirdo in any sense?
No. I mean, I think that, excuse me, I belched a little bit. We're drinking beers, I should say, for the listening audience at home, so please forgive the occasional belch pause. I was lucky enough. I mean, I guess I identify with a lot of, nerdy cultural things, but I never felt beat up or picked on. I definitely felt, I definitely was called gay by football players, but I think that's pretty regular, and it wasn't in any kind of threatening way that...
It was a benign gay.
It was, yeah, just your average your average
Garden variety.
your garden variety cough while also saying gay.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I always felt like I had people who shared my interests, and great friends who were also taping Mystery Science Theater off TV and memorizing The Simpsons and stuff like that. So
here in Los Angeles, you talk about Orange County, and people will regard it, especially those native to certain parts of Los Angeles, as if you could not find a squarer place in the entirety of America. Like they'll treat it as an office park and a CPK kind of mashed up and spread over 500 square miles that are hard to get around. I've found things I enjoy in Orange County which hint to me that there's more to the picture. You grew up there. How can you complicate that parking lot CPK idea of Orange County, or can you combat it?
Sure. I can talk to that. And certainly the place I grew up in, Mission Viejo, is mostly parking lots and CPKs and giant 20-screen movie theaters that have a CPK attached to them.
But you have good memories from those places, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that here's what I think. Here's what I liked about Orange County in that regard. Is yes, there are not. It's not littered with cool music venues and cool restaurants. But when you found the cool punk rock show, going on in the little space next to the secondhand store, like, it felt really, really special. And I feel if anybody listens to my podcast, a lot of fun is had at the expense of my being really into ska music growing up in high school. And as goofy as that, like, mid-90s third wave ska was, and it is goofy, and I think I no illusions that it is super goofy, but it was this, like, thing that was going on that was, when it started, absolutely outside any kind of polite society, it felt like, and the kids were all cool and they were dorky and they were looking to have a good time, and I don't know, it makes those little discoveries extra special, and it's why that goofy thing was so special to me growing up, is because it felt like I discovered it.
What did it give you? I mean, we discover these cultural niches in high school and such, and they sort of give us a part of our identity. What did that give you? Like, when you found it, you thought, oh great, here's this part of me that has gone unexpressed. I mean, what did ska get at that time?
I think it was just that, like, it was just having a thing that I was into that everyone else wasn't, and in a time where my peers were into Limp Bizkit and Smash Mouth, I could say, yeah, they're okay, but have you heard of Mustard Plug? And I don't know, it felt nice. It felt like just a little thing that was mine that wasn't necessarily everybody else's.
I guess, given your comedic interests, tell me then what the process was for you to decide to go to the comedic mecca of Santa Cruz, California for college.
I didn't pick Santa Cruz for any comedy reasons. God knows, I think that there was one improv group there, which I joined, and there's no proper comedy club or anything like that. It's a very serious place, Santa Cruz. Very earnest. Free the West Memphis 3, free Mumia.
Right. Mostly Mumia-related activities going on in town.
Yeah, most of the activities are Mumia-related, or
a Leonard Peltier.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Rain stick appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't. I kind of just picked there because it felt cool. It felt like the opposite of Orange County. It's like there's a bong store. And
you were in full Orange County flight mode at that point?
Not because I disliked it, and I definitely am not. Never had to see you assholes later. I'm out of here, and I'm never coming back. And
skateboard out as you thrash a guitar.
Exactly. Yes.
Trail of fire in your way.
Yeah, I parasail out.
Sure.
No, I definitely never was that kind of, petulant, I hate you all youth. But yeah, it just felt good different, it just felt like I've never done this before, so.
And that, of course, was the site where you encountered a young Jesse Thorne, who, as I said, has been on the show. Your co-host now on Jordan Jesse Go, host of now Bullseye, formerly the public radio show, The Sound of Young America. You two developed sort of what you do there. What I don't think I'm going too far to say Santa Cruz, like where I went to college, Santa Barbara, is an isolated environment to sort of develop your thing. Is that a way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's definitely very... Santa Cruz is very supportive, and the college is very supportive. And I don't know if this is... I don't know if this is true across all the UC colleges, but, you can, like, create your own major, and I think that's, a good little summation of what they're about. It's just like, just do it. It's awesome. We support you. We're behind you. You're amazing. Or
did there end up being guys essentially majoring in The Simpsons or whatever as a result of that?
Yeah, for sure. And that's absolutely good and bad. But no, and I think Santa Cruz aside, I think college is just a great place. Like, there's, if you want to rent out a space for a show, you can do that by signing up and, giving them your ID as collateral. And there's a college radio station, which I don't know if those are going away or not. Hard to say. Probably not. I bet those will stick around. Anyways, and there's a college radio station where you can just fuck around and be bad for a while, and which, I mean, I'm pretty sure...
You can be bad in every way, but saying fuck, I guess, on
exactly,
the station.
Yes.
Here it's good.
Yeah. So yeah, we can, and there's a place to, like, be bad for a while and to discover, how to host and how to segue, and there's just, like, UC Santa Cruz in particular, but I think college in general, if you want to be artistic, there's just, like, a lot of ways to do it. And I think that I definitely did a lot of bad sketch shows and a lot of bad improv shows and a lot of bad college radio shows, and just, gradually got to figure it out,
And, you graduate Santa Cruz, you're into comedy, you have this sort of experience behind you of knowing how to host things. Tell me, I'll draw a spectrum. When I moved to Los Angeles, I moved here essentially out of fascination with Los Angeles and little more. I talk to people here involved in the industry, as they say, who feel dragged here by their abilities. Like, well, I guess I'm going to Los Angeles. That's where success is. Screw this place, but I gotta go.
Yeah.
Where on that spectrum would you put yourself between, I really want to move to Los Angeles because of Los Angeles, and Los Angeles, I guess I'll go?
I will say this. I feel dragged. I definitely feel like, I would like to make a living with jokes and comedy, so this is the place to do it.
And New York is not an option?
Yeah, I think New York is one of those places where there are a few jobs in comedy. There's The Daily Show, there's Saturday Night Live, and perhaps some others. Maybe
if you consider Law and Order to be a comedy show, that's fruitful.
I mean, I think Ice-T adds a certain kind of,
well, that's all the special victims.
Yeah, exactly. He adds a kind of a lightness to his rape investigations, which I think we appreciate. But yeah, I mean, it's I submit to write on SNL every year, and will continue to do so. And would love to, would absolutely love to move there. But I think it's just, your chances of being employed are significantly less.
The fruit hangs lower off the trees here,
sure,
you might say?
Absolutely. But I do not dislike it. Excuse me, and I definitely recognize its suckinesses, which are,
What are your suckinesses? I mean, there's suckinesses, but what things do you find sucky?
I mean, just like when you are sitting at a coffee shop and there are three guys in jeweled t-shirts yelling about their reality show, or
bedazzled t-shirts.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's just kind of like noise pollution a little bit. It's just like, having to...
It's major city, though. I mean, you get the Wall Street honk in New York.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a great point that people don't make when...
And that's for Chicago, my lord.
Yeah. And I think it's
mostly about deep dish pizza.
Right, yes. A lot of loud conversations about deep dish pizza. It's like,
that's all they have.
Everywhere has its ugly, touristy place. I mean, have you been to Times Square in New York City lately? What an eyesore.
It's in the world, yeah. Times Square, Fisherman's Wharf, Sunset Strip.
Yeah, for sure. And whereas, per square feet, LA might have more of that than those other meccas. But, like New York and San Francisco and Chicago and St. Louis. It has its wonderful, awesome places and wonderful, awesome people. So just hang out there and don't go to those other places unless you have to. And if you have to, have some fun with it. Have some fun laughing at it.
Los Angeles is also like 1,000 square miles, so maybe that dilutes it a little, or is that its own suckiness that it's so big?
I think that the suckiness is certainly big, and it's hard to ignore. And because you have to drive so much, you have to sometimes drive through the suckiness. But I think just I don't want to have another LA sucks conversation in my entire life. I think it's so, it's just so empty and myopic. And I think that if you're here, enjoy yourself. I would much rather hear about the restaurants you love and the places you love and the great views and the great hikes and whatever it is you love about the place is so much more interesting than, can you believe these assholes in their deep V t-shirts? It's God, totally. Well, let's just depress ourselves. So I think that, yes, it has its sucky places, but so does everywhere else. Just don't hang out there.
You won't find a less Los Angeles sucks person than me, although what's fascinating is that, what people don't like about here reveals a lot about themselves, doesn't it?
Sure, yeah, I think so, definitely. And I think that's true. And it is you do have to do a little bit of searching and a little bit of digging, and it kind of like in Orange County, having to find that little music venue next to the secondhand store that Mustard Plug is playing at. You do kind of have to find
the OC problems stick around.
Absolutely, yeah, you do have to. And I think that people who do maybe grow up in a more plain Jane suburban neighborhood or a small town appreciate LA more because they're just excited to be around the cool stuff, and the suckiness doesn't creep in as easily. And I think that's totally what it's like for me. And I think that definitely people who come here from New York or San Francisco or Chicago are a lot more bothered by the suckiness because they can't help but compare it to their place. And
they've long gone blind to the suckiness of their place.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And they learned to avoid Times Square, and they were able to laugh at it, but they just haven't learned to laugh at the Sunset Strip yet, and I think they just have to do,
So a post-college Jordan Morris feeling a little dragged toward Los Angeles.
Yeah.
What do you do to separate yourself from the sort of rabble of supplicants to the entertainment industry who relocate to Los Angeles with a bedazzled shirt and a dream, I guess? What do you do to not be that?
Bedazzled shirts are prohibitively expensive. I don't know if you've ever tried to purchase.
They don't let me in.
No, I know. You have to show a bank statement before you go in. So I think other than... but I actually did literally have to buy one of those as a costume piece one time. You cannot get a bedazzled dragon shirt for under $50, and that's the sale rack.
What neighborhood do you go to? Are you on the Strip?
Melrose. You're going to Melrose.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you probably can't get it on the Strip, but Melrose is the key place for that. I think the comedy community really helped. When I first moved here, I started going to open mics and taking improv classes, and kind of finding those other comedy nerds that taped Mystery Science Theater off the TV as kids and have every episode of The Simpsons season 3 memorized. I think the comedy community is just a beautiful, beautiful thing out here, and it's full of great people, and a great way to find people who like being creative for the sake of being creative, not necessarily, so they can get a development deal or something like that. Although we would all like development deals, as would I. Give me one, please. It's a great place to find creative people who have good taste and are the lovely antidote to the jeweled t-shirt crowd. Although I think that maybe that stereotype is almost gone. I feel like you see fewer and fewer jeweled t-shirts these days. It's mostly
the going the way of square-toed shoes.
A little bit, yeah, for sure. But I think I can still use it for a few more months, depending on when this podcast airs.
It does seem like, the comedy done up here, there is that. We talked about this off mic a little bit, but the whole thing, great, I got all this new media, I can use it, I'm using it, I'm making new things, I'm pushing the boundaries boundaries, but also like, well, I would like to air on ABC. Like, I would like to go to the oldest, most established, most fuddy-duddy arena. Like, there's always that desire, as much fervency as there is for, like, I can make a risque YouTube video, or I don't even know what they're on to now, but, like, how do you see that dynamic of, like, excitement for the new, but also this longing for the very old that can't go away in terms of where you're working, what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I think there's a combination of things that people want out of a creative endeavor. Everyone would like to make their living doing it. And I think that's kind of first and foremost. How can I just concentrate on this and not my crummy office job or PA job or table waiting job or whatever? Like, I think that's maybe first and foremost, is how can I make this my job? That's what every creative person wants more than anything. So I think that, if you can make something your job, you will and you will have to make a lot of compromises. And then I think, kind of secondary is this something that I like, that is my voice, that, excuse me again, that has few compromises attached to it. So
I'm going to have to check the burp checkbox on iTunes for this episode. They put a burp icon by it.
Is that a genre?
Well, it's more of a warning indicator.
Okay, yeah, warning belches. I guess there are some people who are particularly grossed out by belches who would, maybe avoid this one. Go back and listen to the D.C. Pearson one again, because
that's a good one.
I can't imagine there was any belches in that.
No. More swears, though, I think.
Fair enough. So I think that, you're always kind of trying to make this concoction for yourself of getting paid and doing what you want and doing a project that you love and working with people that you love. And sometimes you can have two of the three, sometimes you can have one of the, I think I listed 4 things there, but, sometimes you can have one of those, 2 of those, 3 of those, and ideally, you would like to be, working on Conan O'Brien, where you have all of those.
Is his show still the golden calf for a young alternative comedy, hard-working guy? The Conan O'Brien show in particular, I don't think has a lot of turnover when it comes to writers. I think that the guys writing it, Brian Stack, Todd Levin, Andre Dubochet. Todd Levin's coming on the show.
Oh, great. Well, terrific. Sure, he won't belch.
Stay tuned, listeners.
Yeah, right. Ooh, will he belch? I think those guys have been working on the show since it was, on NBC, and then was, The Tonight Show, and now is on TBS. So, I think that you don't hear a lot of your friends say, I'm up for Conan. But I think it is a good symbol for the kind of show that you would like to work on, that is respected and fun and silly and well-liked and has a great voice and is intelligent. So, yeah, and I think that,
Has only been pretty abused by the world in general.
It's only been what?
It's only been pretty abused by the world in general.
Right,
thrown
exactly.
around.
Exactly. Abused, but then pulled closer to the
as abusers do,
to the cultural bosom in a lot of ways. But I would love to work on a show that I thought as highly of as I do of Conan. So yeah.
And one of the comedy shows that you do that people will know you from well, I think a lot of the listeners will, is Jordan Jesse Go, the comedy podcast going since 2006, which formed when Jesse came down to Los Angeles even more reluctantly than you, I take it, from knowing him as well. Plus
literally kicking and screaming.
Yeah, he's got the San Francisco thing, so there's that. He forgot the suckiness of Fisherman's Wharf.
He did, yeah.
It's like it doesn't even exist to him. But he came down, you were able to form this comedy podcast, which, how to put it, it's of a genre that is oft imitated in the podcast world because it is you guys talking. It's 2 guys talking, in late 20s, early 30s guys talking with a guest, making jokes, talking about things in their lives. It's a genre whose door essentially seems to have closed behind Jordan Jesse Go in terms of creative innovation, but it doesn't stop imitators. How do you see what genre you work in, if any, by the way?
Yeah, when we... Okay, so the show is, close-ish to what we were doing on college radio. And on college radio, we were very unique in that we were trying to do comedy and we were trying to do conversation. Usually it was just kind of a mopey 19-year-old playing, some rare B-sides, a combination of rare B-sides and tracks from their friends' bands.
Yes.
That was college radio, and the fact that there were guys trying to be funny and conversational and personal was weird. We were not the norm.
You were always fighting the stink eye.
No, I think people liked us. I don't think we were ever looked down upon. I think we had a lot of maybe angry calls from hippie townies who just wanted to hear Grateful Dead bootlegs. But as far as in the college radio community,
you only had the standard major label releases of the Grateful Dead. You didn't have bootlegs.
Exactly, no bootlegs, and we had not enough Zydeco music for the taste of the Santa Cruz townie. But no, so we got a little bit of flack for stuff like that, but ultimately we felt really supported and well liked. And then, kind of at the dawn of the podcast era, podcasts were mostly Mac tips. I think you can say that most podcasts were either Mac or grammar tips. So I think the fact that we were a comedy show that was conversational and, brought in guests from the world of comedy was unusual. So I think we stood out in podcasts in the way that we stood out on college radio. Now, as they should, every comedian has a podcast. Every comedian with a bigger following. And
especially in Los Angeles, by the way.
Absolutely.
It remains geographical, even though the internet supposedly stripped that away. It's still Los Angeles-centric, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a podcast mecca. And, because there are more gab, funny, conversational, personal podcasts, I think when people start them these days, they think, what can my theme be? Which I think is wise. And anybody who is starting one now, I would say, good God, don't just do a gab podcast. That is so played out. So I think that you have shows like How Did This Get Made, which is Paul Scheer's podcast, where they talk about bad movies. Or you have The Indoor Kids with Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon, which is video games, and they all have that kind of element of conversational personalness. Their lives all come into it, and their personalities and their sense of humor. But they have this jumping off point, whether it be bad movies or video games or what have you. That's just kind of their hook. For sure. And if we were starting Jordan Jesse Go today, if Jesse and I said, let's do a podcast, I can't imagine we would say to each other, let's just gab. Because,
the gabbiness is a function of you starting in sort of a barren, bare trees podcast environment, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that when we started, that was novel enough. The fact that we were gabbing and being funny and having comedians as guests.
Managing to upload it.
Yes, and getting it out there in a semi-regular way. That was enough. And now it absolutely would not be. So,
and it's you guys have worked your way into now it's a very distinctive niche of the podcast ecosystem, because you are gabbing. You do have a new guest every week. And yet, tell me what it's like to be able to gab, and yet the audience is large. Gab podcasts don't really take off now, but would you have a sense that you're speaking to thousands of people when you're talking about your lust for chicken wings or things like that?
Like having Twitter. After an episode gets uploaded, I always get 5 or 10 ats a day about something we talked about, whether it was, hey, I'm obsessed with chicken wings too, or...
What topics really play as far as the ats?
Here's something that... Here's, I think, some things that we've talked about that the internet loves, and I can explain some of them, and some of them I can't. The internet loves...
Just throw up your hands sometimes.
Satsumas, which are a tiny seedless citrus. Talking about those seems to really spark a lot of feelings. The chicken wing discussion. I have recently acquired a weird kind of almost sexual obsession with chicken wings. to the point where right now this restaurant that we're at serves chicken wings. They're not on the brunch menu. When the guy comes back, I'm going to ask him if they would bring the chicken wings.
Probably do that for a podcasting celebrity.
I hope so. I would hope that they would. And
they might know you from Fuel.
And there's a lot of ways people could know me, and just from coming in a lot and ordering the chicken wings.
Sure, that's the main way they know you.
Yeah, I'm a celebrity in that world too. The chicken wing ordering sphere. Right. Cats and pets in general. The internet loves to talk about that. And secret sex parties, speculating as to what goes on at an orgy, at a Ren Fair hotel room party. That seems to really ignite the imaginations of the listener.
This gets at something about the audience for Jordan Jesse Go, and Jordan Jesse Go is under Jesse Thorne's banner of MaximumFun.org, where I write a column about podcasting, and it has a certain distinctive audience, and I'm trying to pin it down because the audience loves cute webcomics and they love displays of sincerity and handicrafts, but they also seem to love secret sex parties. There's this sort of there's this immature divide that is somehow extreme, that's distinctive to the Maximum Fun audience. Do you get what I'm saying at all?
I do, and it's a really hard thing for me to think about and talk about when someone says, what's your thing? It's difficult for me to pin down, obviously we just spent time pontificating about what Family Guy's thing was, and I'm sure that, the writers for that have a hard time pinning it down, and I have a hard time pinning down what our thing is, but I think here's the best way I've heard it articulated. When we were, the Maximum Fun banner brings in new podcasts on occasion. And I think one of the most recent ones they've brought in was a show called My Brother, and Me, which is an advice show by three very, very funny guys who are all brothers. And the way Jesse explained that they fit with our audience is that they're vulgar, but they're not mean, and they're silly. So I think that, for a lot of people, when you say vulgarity, you think about, the Joe Rogans and the Adam Carollas of the world, who are very vulgar, but it has a kind of aggression to it. Or Family Guy.
A secret intelligence to guys like that.
Oh, yeah, I am absolutely not a slam to Adam Carolla or Joe Rogan. Adam Carolla, in particular, I'm a huge fan of, and he's had us on his podcast a few times, and it's, just been a dream come true blast, and I think he is... absolutely a broadcasting and comedy genius, though sometimes a political weirdo.
You wanted to sit in his Lamborghini, didn't you?
I wanted nothing more, and someday I hope to sit in his Lamborghini or his 60s Roadster, or one of his vintage cars, whichever one. I would feel honored.
One of his old shiny cars.
Yeah, but I think when people hear vulgarity, they think of kind of meanness and immaturity, and I think that Jesse and I and my brother, and me, all we like dirty jokes and speaking frankly about sex and stuff like that, but we also love silliness, and we're not mean. We're rarely aggressive or overly critical toward anything. And, and I think that's something that there's a group of people out there is like, oh, I love talking about diarrhea and eating pussy, but I don't want to feel like anyone's getting their feelings hurt. Right. So yeah, it's hard to pin down why people listen, but I think that sensibility is part of it.
And I think I speak for every Jordan Jesse Go listener when I say, the personality you display on that show, on this one, articulate, many interests, observant, seems direly at odds with the job you had for a long stretch by entertainment industry standards, which was hosting the show The Daily Habit on Fuel TV, which is a station about wakeboarding, as I understand.
Yeah, Fuel TV is Fox Sports' action sports channel, so they deal a lot with...
pointedly not extreme sports.
No. That's something I learned very, very early on, is that
that takes you to 1999 or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word extreme was associated with Doritos commercials and, some sort of cartoon where robotic sharks jumped out of an airplane or something. So I think the extreme overstayed its welcome, and by the time I was working for the company, it was action sports. Street luge, I think, is something they wanted to separate themselves from. Dan Cortez in general.
So, I mean, us Jordan Jesse Go listeners who listen to you when you were working at Fuel and think, that must be a living hell for this guy to work there. I mean, are we wrong? Was it a better fit than it seemed?
Yes. Well, you're kind of wrong. It was only a partial hell. It was a kind of a limbo. No. I am actually a guy who has a pretty hearty appreciation and enjoyment of low culture. I love Jason Statham movies and punk rock and snapping into a Slim Jim and getting wings at Hooters and stuff like that.
The best Jason Statham movie is...
The Bank Job is the best film. The most fun is Death Race remake.
Death Race remake and War with Jet Li. Is that anything?
I haven't seen that one. I'm told it's boring. I'm told that despite having Lee and Statham, that they don't fight a lot. That the war is maybe an overstatement or...
And the Transporter films as a vehicle for Statham delivery, are they
they're very good. They're very good. Maybe skip the third one, but the first two are delights.
Okay.
Delights.
Revolver? Guy Ritchie's Revolver?
No, that's maybe a little much. I would say Revolver isn't real Statham-y. It's more... it's more awkward inclusion of philosophy-y.
Yeah, it's more Kabbalah than Statham.
Yeah, it's sure. If you're into some Kabbalah stuff, it's probably the movie for you. If you're into face kicks and Cockney rhyming slang, go elsewhere.
But you're into face kicks and Cockney rhyming slang, and continue.
Yeah, so, I mean, I liked, I had no problem kind of enjoying that stuff. And I got to work with video games a lot on the show, which is an interest and passion of mine. Like most TV jobs, creative people dealing with the business people is always tough. It's usually at odds. Usually the business people have a different agenda.
Or don't know what comedy is in a basic way.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely I had to do a lot of explaining that jokes need setups. I feel like that was a discussion I had a lot at Fuel TV, was that yes, guy gets kicked in balls is funny, but if we raise the stakes in some way...
From zero.
Right, exactly. Or we know who the guy is and why the balls are getting kicked, it will be funnier. So there were a lot of times where, people are just get to the fart, or just get to the tits, or just get to the, the ball
You had
kick.
seen The Simpsons cover this with the classic Hans Moleman film, Man Getting Hit by Football, in the Springfield Film Festival. You knew why that wouldn't play.
Absolutely. Barney's film had heart, but football in the groin had a football in the groin. I think is a really good, kind of a little summation of the fight between creative and business.
Was your life at Fuel just a daily struggle against the man getting hit by footballs of the world, or was that just kind of an occasional thing? Like they pull you in, they say, "Jordan, we're gonna need more crotch wax," and you're like, "Okay, you're gonna have to give the explanation again." Or was it more of a periodic thing, or just a grind?
It was, I would say that it was, at its best was kind of 70% pleasure and goofy fun and 30% annoyance. Toward the end of the show, actually, some new bosses came in who were even more corporate than the original bosses. They were guys from Fox, the network, specifically. And it's I'm not a guy who cares about skateboarding, but I have a lot in common with a guy who does care about skateboarding. We both care about, punk rock and coolness and drinking beer and jokes and being outrageous.
Right.
So, whereas when I was dealing with the guys who cared about skateboarding, we could always connect on that level. But the corporate guys who didn't even care about skateboarding proved to be even harder to deal with, because they were as deaf to comedy as the other guys were, but also now didn't care about anything that I cared about. So I would say that toward its end, it was maybe 50% pleasure, 50% annoying conversations about why can't we just get to the football in the groin. So I mean, probably good that it ended when it did.
And tell me about the other part of this. This is a subject you've covered many a time on Jordan Jesse Go, but the fact that this job dropped you into the sort of Vans warped tours of the world, these the world of kids 15 years younger than you, who came up essentially in a different generation culturally. What was that environment like? I mean, the audience you're working with, you got dropped into physically as well. So what could you take from that, or could you find a way to take something from that, or learn or grow in the world of sort of sagging 15-year-olds on wakeboards?
Oh gosh, let me...
Not to slam on them, because we've all been 15, but this is, everybody's... The 15-year-olds of today are always going to seem like space aliens.
Yeah. Yes, definitely something that I don't understand about modern 15-year-olds is why they like a band where one guy sings in a whiny voice and then one guy screams. That's the main thing that I had a hard time wrapping my brain around. And then more recently, why there's a band where one guy screams, but then it's also intense dance music, where some guy is screaming like it's death metal, but then you also have dance music beats behind it. That's something.
Can you see at all an analogy between this and why do you like that goofy music with the horns that you have to go to the antique store to hear?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Absolutely. I mean, that, I think part of the reason why I liked ska, and I think this is a reason that young people like things, is that it kind of confounded not only my parents, but, my peers in a lot of ways. And I think that, I think it's also part of the reason why kids love, like, Pokemon and things that are, like, Japanese, is because if you've ever listened to an 8-year-old talk about Pokemon, it is so indecipherable and bizarre and, could not seem more weird and cultish. And I think they like that. And I think that, in a way, when you are young and looking to create your own identity, you like to confuse others with it. You like it when people don't understand what you like about it, So, yeah.
I mentioned at the top of the show, people can watch your videos, the Action Circle, the Gamewave, these parody commercials, and you write for a web series now, MyMusic. So, working in the new media, this is something else you've mentioned on Jordan Jesse Go, your inability to convey to your mom what it is you do or why, how it is sustaining you. I mean, what can you tell us about what the pros and cons are of working in this sort of Wild West type media?
I think that here's a good as with any medium, whether it be TV or TV comedy or procedural drama or live comedy show or live confessional storytelling show, the audience of that genre has some things that you'll be tempted to pander to. Podcast too, absolutely. I mentioned satsumas as being a topic that really gets the audience going. I think that leads us to talk about satsumas more than we would normally because it gets the audience going. It's like when you learn what that thing is that gets the audience going, it's hard to resist the temptation not to go back to that well. And I think with web video, there are things that will get the audience going that will not get the audience going of another genre. And I think with web video, like specific references to video games and, if a video has something to do with a MILF, these are things that work in web video that maybe won't work on TV or in a movie or something. So I think that with any genre, there's finding the balance between pleasing the audience, giving them what they want, and also not pandering. Because I have nothing against video game references or MILFs, but I don't want that to be all I do. So. It's saying I'm going to give them video game references and MILFs, but also do something that I'm proud of, that interests me. So, yeah, and I think that's just what I'm going through now, writing for a web series, and what the creators are certainly going through. It's, how can we give them what they want, but also create a product that we're proud of? And I think you can do both, and I think it's absolutely possible to do both, but it's a tightrope walk, you know.
Do you think it's partially a function of this historical moment where a web video is a different thing from entertainment in general? Like, in 10 years, I'm sure people won't be saying, well, this is a web video and this is a show. Like, are we just in an awkward technological era where the wall between a web series and a series is breaking down but not broken down yet?
Yeah, well, you know, I'll say this about it. A big trend in LA and New York these days, in places that have comedy scenes, is the confessional storytelling show. The Moth, Risk, things like this. They're very, very popular, and rightfully so. They have a great group of people contributing to them. And the kind of the nature of these performances is it's always a personal story, usually a little bit embarrassing, and it's kind of equal parts funny and poignant. There's always jokes, sometimes terrific jokes, but then for this kind of performance to be successful, it also has to have a little bit of poignance, or kind of a bigger lesson, or some sort of universality to it. And when you are at a small supper club or listening to a podcast with this kind of thing, that's great. But if you were at the Laugh Factory or the Improv or Rooster Teeth Feathers or the Chuckle Hut, and someone was up there doing a performance that was equal parts poignance and humor, that would seem wrong. And whether you were, a drunk frat guy or a drunk bachelorette party girl or not, the fact that you were seeing that kind of performance in that kind of venue would be off-putting. So I think it's just all about considering the venue. And I think that's just what...
Which means considering the audience.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that's what I think is happening with web video. And, I think that the Funny or Die website is doing, for the most part, a really great job of being web video, but also being funny. Like, the things that work on Funny or Die are not necessarily things that would work on Saturday Night Live, but there's a lot of really good stuff, and it works as web video. And it's hard to say what that quality is. It's really hard to say what that quality is. I couldn't pin it down myself, and, maybe they couldn't either. But I think that's what web video is doing. It's finding what works about this, what this audience wants, what this medium can do, and also how do we make it actually funny. Not just someone saying MILF and then a panda sneezing. Like, can we do something that has character and narrative and great jokes that also seems like it's for this?
Right. The issue of spending down your goodwill, it must be a factor because, you say MILF a few times, it gets you through the first 3 videos, you get hits. The 4th, 5th video, probably those hits aren't coming back because even those people sense that this is not a deep well.
Yeah, absolutely. God, I mean, it there could be no better illustration of that than, shit blank says. Which I'm sure by the time this podcast comes out is a meme that has long since jumped the shark. But yeah, I don't think, I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who wouldn't say that original Shit Girls Say video and that Shit Girls Say Twitter feed isn't pretty funny and pretty observant and, rooted in truth, but also works for web video. I think that's a pretty good example of a pretty funny web video that, yes, is now even a joke unto itself, to or there are videos parodying it and videos parodying people trying to think of parodies.
3 meta layers up.
Yeah, and it's just too much, and I think that happens, and I think but I don't think it's unique to web video. Honestly, I think it's look at I think you could say like look at recurring SNL characters. When is Stefan the most hilarious thing you've ever seen, and when is it just the old skeleton with new details plugged in? I might say my tolerance for Stefan is higher than other recurring characters. I could not love Stefan more, but you can plug in It's Pat or The Ladies Man or whatever, and I think that's and even stand-up comedians, like when can Andrew Dice Clay stop doing filthy nursery rhymes?
He's got bills, so I don't think he can stop.
No, I think to stay alive, and in the cocaine he so desperately needs.
He doesn't even get high anymore off it. He just needs it. He
just needs it to stay upright. Basically, if he doesn't have the right amount of blow, he will collapse. So yeah, I think that it's a problem with web video when to stop, but it's also a problem with humor, and I don't think it's unique to web video. So.
Now, I've mentioned the 2 of the videos I've watched recently of yours, the Action Circle and the Gamewave, parody commercials of video game-related services and devices. And I said off mic I don't like to ask thematic questions directly, but it does seem you have an interest in the twisted attitudes about sexuality inherent to the video gaming community. Is that right to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. These 2, I'll explain these 2 videos. Action Circle was a video I made with Funny or Die, kind of in its infancy, when the rhythm gaming fad was in its infancy. This is like when games like Guitar Hero and Wii Sports and stuff were becoming all the rage. And the kind of traditional, the hardcore gamers, the people who didn't like this kind of thing, their view was, I don't want to do that. Moving around when I'm playing video games makes me look gay. And there's all this paranoia about, I don't want to do this because I'll look gay. And the Action Circle is a video game where you have to do kind of explicitly gay things. So it's kind of parodying that idea. And more recently, me and a good buddy from Fuel TV made this video called Gamewave, and it's a parody of the kind of ubiquitous late-night Gamefly commercials. Gamefly is a service. It's kind of like Netflix, but for video games. And the commercials feature are kind of confessionals from Gamewave users talking about how with Gamewave they can play unlimited video games and as many video games as they want, and you can play every game before it hits store shelves, and just kind of talking about how this service fuels their gaming obsession. And our version is the guys talking about how they can play all the video games they want, but then the announcer asks them if they know what a vagina feels like, and none of them do, and they have all these weird theories about what it feels like. So I guess that was just born of me watching those commercials, and as a gamer thinking to myself, these commercials make us look pathetic. And it's not, I don't think that's, obviously they weren't trying for that, but I think it's just like the stereotype of gamers is that they're shut-ins who it's all they want to do. When I think in reality, the modern late 20s, early 30s guy, gaming is just kind of part of their entertainment diet, along with podcasts and TV and, what have you. It's part of the thing they do for leisure. And, only rarely when a Skyrim comes out or something do they go into hibernation mode. So yeah, I guess that was kind of a joke on that idea. It's like, how pathetic can these make us look?
Your place in gaming culture comes up on Jordan Jesse Go, and as anybody, as I said, we're both early 80s born, both played video games growing up. We've seen that go from a thing we could do by ourselves and kind of be ignored while we do it to video games have entered the culture in a number of ways in a broad sense. Is there a sense in which it feels like your own thing got taken away and made public, like you got cast into a light when video games became not a thing for video gamers, but a thing everybody knows about?
Yeah, no, God, that is a weird dynamic that exists, is that there are, there's the hardcore, there's the faithful, there's the guys who, when they were kids learned Japanese so they could play Final Fantasy games that hadn't been localized yet. And then there's the frat guys who, play Halo every night. I think that both things can exist. I think you can still be a hardcore gamer who appreciates it in a different way than everybody else. I think that it just as it is now, because everyone grew up with a Nintendo and everyone got a Wii.
And then everyone forgot they had a Wii.
Yes, and then everyone put their Wii in the closet or just used it to watch Netflix. I think that more people, have a video game that is their video game, but a guy who is into video games is still a niche. So, whereas, in this restaurant, we could probably go up to any dude in our age range and say, what's your favorite video game? And they would probably all have an opinion. But, if we asked any dude to rank the Uncharted games in terms of quality, few of them would be able to do it. So, I think it's a thing where it's more common, but the faithful are still the faithful and always will be. So
it seems like, to me, it's... You're a gamer, but you would not want to be painted with the broad gamer brush. You're a comedy writer. You wouldn't want to be painted with the broad comedy writer brush. You came to Los Angeles to work in the industry, but you wouldn't want to be painted with that broad brush. How much in your mind is that struggle to not be this? You're a podcaster, a gab podcaster. Don't want to be painted with that brush. The struggle to be not the generic version of things.
I'll tell you what. Being pigeonholed is good and bad. I have gotten a lot of meetings and had a lot of opportunities because I am a comedy writer who is also a gamer. It's how I got my job at Fuel. It is the first thing I did for them was...
and to think you probably got told you're never going to make anything of yourself. Keep playing Genesis.
Absolutely.
Were you Genesis or Super NES?
Genesis, yes, all the way.
Like me.
I had a Super NES, but I identified more.
You had both?
I did. I got the Super Nintendo kind of late in its life when Link to the Past came out. But yes, Genesis does what Nintendo don't.
Sure.
It was their slogan back then. I think it still rings true today.
That meant you could play Alien Storm on the Genesis?
You could totally play Alien Storm on the Genesis. And Altered Beast, the Streets of Rage franchise,
Truxton, Herzog Zwei.
Absolutely. I got hired at Fuel because they needed someone to cover E3 for them, which is a big video game convention. And they're like, well, hell, do we know any comedians who are into video games? My name came up and that started the job. So I think that pigeonholing can work for you sometimes. I think it's when you are qualified for a job, but you are pigeonholed where it can be frustrating. But I think it's a benefit as much as it is a liability. This is a good example. Something I've been dealing with. I have a pretty robust hosting reel from Fuel TV, but most of my interviews are kind of goofy. So when I go
see them all on YouTube.
Yes, they exist on YouTube. I do these kind of goofy celebrity interviews.
Megan Fox, a Woody Harrelson.
Absolutely.
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell. A lot of big stars. A lot of A-list talent on that YouTube channel. YouTube.com/Jordan Morris. So when I go into interview for a hosting job, a lot of times people say just like, well, thanks but we're not looking for anything goofy. And it's that thing of like, well, can't you just tell me to be more serious? I actually have had a couple people take me up on being a more serious host, and I have had a lot of fun doing that. And it's not something I haven't been able to overcome, but it's hard. Definitely, they see me goofing around with a celebrity, and a lot of people think that's all I can do.
Producers, pull up The Sound of Young America with Bruce Campbell, interviewed by Jordan Morris.
Oh, please do. That is an in-depth interview. They're very confessional. So I think that it can open doors, but it also closes them. So I think you just you have to take the good and the bad on the subject of pigeonholing.
I've been speaking with actor, comedian, comedy writer, web video creator Jordan Morris. You can find him on Jordan Jesse Go. He writes for MyMusic, the web series. You can pull up his past Fuel TV interviews on his YouTube channel. Jordan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
This has been Notebook on Cities and Culture. I've been Colin Marshall. If you want to keep up with the cultural creators, internationalists, and observers of the urban scene on the show, visit colinmarshall.org. Thanks. And special thanks to the people backing this season, including Aidan Nullman, Andy Cooney, Ben Bartley, Brian J. Dell, Doubt Us Artwork, Greg Bigelow, Greg Linster, Henry Coronan, Humberto Grant, James Faber, Jonathan McCalmont, Mark Larson, Matt Warren, Mia Muratori, Nicholas Croft, Paul Doyle, Ray McGuire, Rob Montz, Robert Foley, Roberto Medri, Samuel Hansen, Sean Dudley, Small Demons, Stephen Ingles, Steve Himmer, TSD, and Wayne Wright.